Greetings from lovely New Hampshire. As the sun is setting behind me, I'm Doug Kezirian, alongside Jordan Schultz and Preston Johnson. We're dissecting a few of the key storylines as we approach the NBA resumption. And we start with the Pelicans, who obviously have rookie Zion Williamson, the former number 1 overall pick, not with the team as of now, is left, and we're not really sure exactly when he's going to return. So certainly some uncertainty there. In terms of the Pelicans, they are one of a few teams chasing that 8th and final playoff spot. No minus 320 to reach the postseason, the comeback plus 250. Jordan, obviously a lot of moving parts here. How would you approach New Orleans and the betting of it?
So I like New Orleans, but that's with Zion. That's the big caveat. And we're told that he could miss games. And you're not in the position, if you're the Pelicans, to not have Zion even for 1 or 2 games. It's such a small sample size. And when you think about what he means to that team offensively and defensively, transition-wise, he's a beast, right? In the paint, he converts about 8%. And he's averaging about 18 points a game in the paint, which is the most of any rookie ever since the stat was kept track 25 years ago. So that's how much he means to them. And then if you think about New Orleans, they're a very average team offensively without him. They're really below average defensively, just as a whole, 18th, 19th in the league. So I look at the Pelicans, and I don't think there's enough value to justify. Maybe if it was plus 300, plus 320. But to me, there's just not enough value, especially considering he could miss games.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Obviously, I feel everyone's pain. We're all jonesing to fire on something, but don't force it here. There's just too much uncertainty. In fact, in game 1, it's off the board right now. They play the opener of this resumption against the Jazz. Before the news surfaced with Zion, Pelicans had shifted to a minus 2-point favorite over Utah. No Bogdanovich for the Jazz. Preston, how are you approaching this opener?
Well, you can't bet the opener without Zion. We at least know that he has such a big positive impact for the Pelicans. The question is, well, how much is he worth to a point spread? And we don't have a ton of games or data to go off of. We know they're better, but it's still too few to really make direct decisions. And then it's even a little more nuanced because you mentioned it. The Jazz themselves don't have Bogdanovich, who now took the year off, but he's taking it off for injury to get that sorted out so he's healthy next year. So now the Jazz without Bogdanovich, they've been worse this season, but they've also played past seasons without Bogdanovich. Conley's been up and down. There are too many question marks for me to just jump in if Zion misses this first game and say, I'm going to hurry him back Utah. I just can't do it. Where I would look is the total. Jordan hit on it. They're slightly better with Zion on the court offensively, but they're elite defensively when he plays. They're nearly 10 points better per 100 possessions on defense when Zion's on the court. You take that away. Look, this is a total at 220.5 to 222 is where it opened at Caesars before it was bet down. That was already over adjusted for this potential layoff and odds makers trying to get out ahead of a slew of unders, because the 10 games prior to the shutdown, the Pelicans' averages for their totals, it was 240, those 10 games. Maybe against the Jazz, who play slower, they're better defensively, like 235. This is down in the low 220s. If Zion's out, I'm betting over. I think it's too big of an overreaction.
Pelicans obviously not alone, one of a few teams competing for that 8th playoff spot. Grizzlies in pole position. They are currently there, but all the other teams have to do is be within 4 games when this regular season ends. The Blazers are one of them, 5-1. And Jordan, obviously you're connected with this team, with the podcast with CJ McCollum, and they're going to be healthy for the first time all season.
It's a massive get for them to get Nurkic back and Zach Collins. And if we go back to the playoffs last year when Portland beat Denver, ultimately lost in the conference finals, Zach Collins really emerged as a second-year big out of Gonzaga. You throw in Nurkic, who was not available, and suddenly Portland has an opportunity, I believe, to at least cause some serious damage and potentially sneak into the playoffs. 5-1 is enough value for me. Having asked around the league, what teams are dangerous? Nobody really talks about the East, but in the West, I've heard 2 names, Sacramento and Portland. Maybe a little Phoenix sprinkled in, but those are the 2 teams. And I would lean on Portland because of the experience factor. Obviously, if CJ McCollum and Damian Lillard can both stay hot, which they've been, especially Lillard leading up to the bubble, you have an opportunity for Portland to potentially make the playoffs and obviously beat some really good teams.
All right, so that's at the bottom of the playoff race. Now to what we consider the contenders, at least as of now. Houston Rockets 6-1 to win the West. Russell Westbrook reportedly recovering currently from coronavirus. James Harden reportedly has already had it. So they're 2 stars in the mix for this pandemic. Preston, you've been touting, if you will, the Rockets a little bit, and 6-1, given this Westbrook news, how do you approach it?
Yeah, I think he's going to be fine. When it's all said and done, if there was one player that I can count on to give 100% with his tenacity and just relentlessness. Like, it's Russ. He's going to find a way when he's in a big game to make plays and go after it. So I'm not too concerned when it's, all said and done. And then my projections, like you said, I've been higher on Houston, just the nature of this uncomfortable, unique bubble situation, shooting on rims that no one's familiar with, embracing and like optimizing the variance, shooting so many threes, going extra small like they did down the stretch before the shutdown. I like them. I have them projected to win the West just over 16% of the time. At 6-1, that's an edge still. My true price would be like plus 517. And this was higher, right? This has actually come down. Caesars had 8-1. They were 16-1 to win it all. These have been coming down, so shop around. I think you can still get better prices out there, but Russ isn't a concern. He's going to be fine. And I select the Rockets as a chance to dethrone the Lakers or Clippers out there in the West.
Now let's check in on the top of the Western Conference. Lakers and Clippers play the nightcap on that opening night. Very simple. Pick 'em line. Pick the team that wins the game. I actually lean to the Lakers here. Look, the Clippers are missing Montrezl Harrell and maybe Landry Shamet. We're not sure if they're going to return in time for this game. I would prefer the Lakers to have playoff Rondo as well as Avery Bradley. But all things considered, LeBron is that Tetris piece. He'll probably handle the ball more. And I just think the Lakers are going to approach this sort of 8-game resumption more seriously before the playoffs get going. I think Doc Rivers is going to pace the Clippers a little bit, knowing that the Lakers are going to be the 1 seed. So I like the Lakers at a pick 'em, even without their guards that are out for this game. Jordan, how are you approaching this one?
Yeah, I actually like the Clippers because I think their balance and their depth, even without Harrell and possibly Shamet, still outweighs the Lakers. Now, if you look at what the Clippers would love to do in this game moving forward, they're going to absolutely lean on Lou Williams. They're going to lean on Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, but they also can control tempo because they have really good guards. We've obviously talked a lot this season about Patrick Beverley. Hopefully Shamet can play. But then if you look at the Lakers, not having Rondo is one thing, but not having Avery Bradley, to me, Doug, is even bigger because there's not a whole lot of guys on the Lakers that are going to consistently bring a nasty, nasty edge. Danny Green's somebody, LeBron, but, Anthony Davis defensively obviously is very good. But on the perimeter, Avery Bradley covers up a lot, and he allows for LeBron to rest at times defensively because he can guard really, really well, including points and shooting guards. So to me, in this game specifically, I would look at the Clippers, and also moving forward, I do think the Clippers' depth is going to really help them in this bubble.
Well, speaking of moving forward, and by the way, don't sleep on my guy, and I know Preston likes him, Caruso, going to get a lot of run. But look at the futures of these two teams. See, in the two-way betting market, head-to-head, it's a pick 'em. But here we see in the futures, Clippers are plus 325, while the Lakers are plus 180. Caesars, talked to Jeff Davis, extremely liable on the Lakers, given how much action they received when they landed Anthony Davis a year ago. So obviously there's better prices out there on the Lake Show, but you see the disparity, Preston, and you'd have to think the Clippers have value given the injuries, but also just the disparity in price here.
They do now. When it's all said and done, I would bet the plus 325. I know we didn't even talk about that before, but that's just too high. The disparity is too much. And I hate to admit, I love Caruso, but do you trust him necessarily yet in a big playoff game and a crucial play down the stretch versus Rondo or even Bradley, who Jordan hit on? I believe the Clippers won 7 of their last 8 before the shutdown. Yeah. They were rolling. The one game they lost was to the Lakers. I think Bradley hit 6 or 7 threes in that game. I mean, he's been doing so much for them. And so it's hard to really, I guess, understate what it means that both of these guys are out. It's going to be a lot of, like you said, Alex Caruso or potentially Quinn Cook, or just LeBron playing point guard and trying to go bigger, which may not work when the Clippers can balance it and go smaller with like Marcus Morris at center or something. So they have so many options. I think the Clippers now should be the favorite. They've gone from about a 1% lower probability to win it all for me prior to the Rondo and Bradley news to now being over a percent more likely than the Lakers to win it all. So Clippers are my favorite, and the price of plus 325 when I have them winning 27% of the time is actually value and worth a bet.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, you cannot bet the Lakers at plus 180, all things considered. A lot to shake out. Maybe they get Rondo back late in the postseason if they go that far, but we're approaching the NBA, which has everyone all smiling.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.